Third take now.
It's all good.
What's up, guys? This is Josh from Runningscaredmotionpictures, and I'm excited because today I have on the show
Marianne Burke.
Marianne. Who are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I am an actress. I'm a musician. I wouldn't consider myself a singer, but I do dabble. But I mainly act. I have occasionally produced my own films, but usually I act on stage or on film, and then I play a variety of instruments. So that's kind of where I'm at performance-wise.
Nice. What got you into the creative arts?
Yeah, so I started out with music. You know, you're in the third grade and they start introducing like the string instruments, violin, whatever, and that's what I chose. And then got bored of it after a year, went to flute, got bored of that, switched over to the clarinet, and I did want to change again, but my music instructor said, no, you're sticking with it, you're not changing again. But I've stuck with clarinet since, and I've picked up some other instruments like the saxophone. I play a little bit of the piano, but that's where I started. And then I also was in a little play called Tall Tales and Heroes, I believe was the name. That was probably 4th or 5th grade or so. I played Molly Pitcher. And then I didn't act until probably my freshman year of high school. So music was kind of my life. And then I also played sports until I had some knee injuries and had to quit. So then I was like, all right, well, I guess the arts is where I'm at. So then I've been acting since my freshman year of high school, and here we are.
When did you find acting? Tell me when the moment was that you were like, no, this is what I want to do. This is cool.
Yeah, I think probably the moment was when I was in high school at some point. I remember the first play that I did was called 7 a.m. I played the role of the jogging teen, and the show was a style, it's all vignettes, and we performed it at a festival called METG, which is the Massachusetts Educational Theater Guild. It's a high school statewide competition, and we made it to the semifinals that year. And my role, we kind of, she was a runner, and then she bumps into this other runner, they fall in love, and then by the end, they end up together. So I think that show, it was really fun because I got to act with new friends, and I remember, I was always like a shy kid. So I remember my director at the time, they made me stand in the auditorium by myself one night. They made everybody else leave, and they made me scream to fill the auditorium.
Oh, wow. Because
I struggled with projection a lot, and I still do, but I've been working on it.
Yeah. Did that help you, though? Did it work?
No.
It just traumatized you and made things much, much worse.
Pretty much. No, not really. It was nice because it was kind of like get out of your comfort zone as well. Mm-hmm. But I remember being super nervous in that time, and then they were like, all right, take a break afterwards, and I did. And I was like, am I going to come back? Am I going to still do this? But then we shortly had the musical after that, and I was like, okay, here we are. We're just in it now.
Awesome. So then you're doing like plays and kind of theater work, and then when did you kind of get the desire to want to do something like on camera?
Or my old high school, they offer AP and IB programs. So I did the IB film program, and I got into that because one of my friends from the drama department had also taken the IB film program, and I was like, I'm going to do that too. And I loved the teacher who taught it. She was amazing. And so I kind of got into that. I was like, yeah, I want to make my own films. I get to act in them too. And I am not the best script writer whatsoever. So whenever it came to that, I was like, all right, somebody else has to write the script. I'm terrible. But I really enjoyed editing when I was in that class. It was 2 years. And I remember by the end, there's a little, it's a musical, it's 35 millimeters. There's one song in it called The Ballad of Sarah Berry. And my final project for the IB program was a film based on that song. And that ended up being really hard. I thought it was a really awesome idea, but in the end, and it was fun, but it was difficult. And I think it ended up being like 10 minutes long, and it was fine, but the editing process took forever. But then I realized I liked acting a lot more. And I mean, I do enjoy behind the scenes a lot, but I get to act a lot more. So it's kind of weird.
Awesome. How did you hear about Running Scared Motion Pictures? How did you meet us?
Oh, so I remember being on Facebook and being in, I don't know if it was the Central Mass or the Western Mass Theater Facebook group. And I remember seeing a post from there originally. And then Johnny Gordon and Tori Jock were like, hey. And then they brought me to you and they said that you did a lot of test shoots. And I think they were the ones who kind of set that up. And we did that test shoot with Tori, and that was the first thing that we did together, and that was awesome. I'm pretty sure. And then because I remember I had reached out to you or vice versa, I don't know. And then rest is history.
Nice. And you did Roles Required with us.
I did.
And you're going to do more with us in the future. We're going to be busy. We have a lot of things coming up in the works that I'm excited about. But like you brought up the writing process. Oh, that's what I'm stuck in right now. And I feel like I'm good up until like 22 pages, but once you start going above that, it's like I have to have the note card spread out because you have to keep everything in line and in order, and it gets difficult. So that's awesome. So you heard about us, we got to do the test shoot, and the first time you got to work with us in Roles Required, I guess you kind of knew a little bit about how we did things and kind of what to expect, but was the shoot different than you thought it was going to be? Was like, just talk about that. What was your expectation coming into it versus what happened?
Yeah. Well, I remember because even from the test shoot, I was like, wow, working with you, it's like nothing that I've ever worked with anybody before. It's like so professional. And the equipment, like everything is awesome. So it's like every time that I've been here to work with you, it's like my expectations just get met higher and higher, and it's just like, wow. But working on Roles Required, that was the first time I ever met Mike. I know I had heard of him from like mutual friends like Chris and Johnny, but so that was really fun. It's always nice to meet Mike and James, so they were awesome to work with. But it was always a fun time, and that was a tough shoot in the woods that day, but it was fun. It was really fun.
I know the bugs were terrible. It was like so hot. We were just like sweating, but yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. Well, I always feel bad because I realized the same thing when I did the podcast with Nicole. I was like, man, there's so many times where we've never really got to talk or do anything. Like we get to talk a little bit before we shoot. We get to talk a little bit about the project. Then you guys show up and I am a million miles an hour and I just have to do so much that I don't get to like slow down and appreciate the people that day. So I'm always like, that's why I enjoy these, because it's like, it just gives us a chance to talk more and what we should have did on set a little bit. But what's nice is now like having Mike and the other guys on board, it's allowing me to have more time to do that stuff. And it's just, I don't know, we're growing. And I appreciate you saying, every time you come here, your expectations keep getting met, because it's like we keep trying to grow. And, you had brought up like the first thing we did together was that test shoot. People don't do that around here. Like, why are you not getting your friends together and like, not because you have to post it online, but like practice your lighting? That's what we did. I practiced lighting. Like I was practicing different camera stuff. You guys are just practicing different lines and things like that. Like that's how we're going to improve at our art. And I kind of feel like, I don't want to say that's lacking in the area, but it's just something that's not being utilized as much as it can. So I really want to try to bring that to Running Scared, or Running Scared wants to bring that to this area, I should say. Where do you plan on going from here? Is acting what you're trying to pursue, or?
This is a tough question. Actually, one of my friends, we were having a talk about this the other day. My friend Marcos, he was asking me, he was like, what do you want to do? Like, what's your dream job? And because I'm a biology major, so he was like, what do you want to do with that? I don't know. Well, what's your dream job? I don't know. So I would love to act, but I'm not majoring in acting in college right now. So it's kind of pushed under the rug, unfortunately. But also for me, I remember when I was like choosing my major when I first had gone to college, I was like, acting, I feel like it's a little too risky for me. And I ended up with biology somehow. But I always love to keep doing projects here and there, whether it's in the city, here. So I think ideally that would be like the dream job somehow. And I've worked on some projects that mean a lot to me, like Illuminate, and just I love working on projects that have such a huge meaning behind it and that mean a lot to me. So whether they get big or not, it's just working on the project that has that deeper underlevel meaning and connection. That's what it is for me. I mean, making money, yeah, that's awesome. I love that. But acting would be the dream, but we'll see. Yeah. You never know, wherever it takes me.
Kind of what you just said, you're like, making money would be great, but like that's why I like working with you, because I like the people that, yeah, like of course, if we could do it, we would, but like it's about the passion. There's more to it than that. And it's like, I feel like, you see it a lot in like professional sports. Listen, I'm a Cowboys fan. When Ezekiel Elliott got signed and started playing like trash, I'm like, he got paid. He doesn't need to play anymore. Like when you're hungry, you want it more, you do like better stuff, I feel like. And I like to find those people that enjoy doing this as much as I do. And that's why I like working with you. So you've prepared a lot to be an actress. You've done a lot of things in regards to that. Talk a little bit about your process, and kind of, you've done classes or like, what you've done to help improve your skill set.
Yeah. So I have taken classes here and there. I think the last class that I actually took was a little over a year ago. It was just through my college. And it was like acting for non-majors, but I loved it. The professor, his name's Ryan Krause. He was incredible. And he challenged us with a lot of different exercises. I remember one thing that I loved that he always did before a class, and keep in mind, this was like a 3-hour class from 7 to 10 p.m. at night. So it wasn't an easy time. It was always like that slap happy hour. But he always did this like rant or rave thing at the beginning of class. And that was always fun because it was either like, all right, there's either something super exciting going on in my life that I can just vent about. Like I remember one day I did talk about Illuminate a lot. Or if there was something stressful going on, I would just dump it all out. But we did some monologue work on that. We did some scene work with the partner. And what was the scene? I don't remember what the show was from, but I did this one scene with an old friend of mine, and it was like the couple, oh my gosh, the characters' names were Ian and Niesa, and I do not remember what the show was from, but that was a super fun scene. It was difficult because they were older characters, and they were like married and they were fighting and whatever, but everything that he did in his class was really awesome. But I think most of my experience is just working with other people. I know like Johnny Gordon, he's helped me a lot with my self-tapes, with my self-tapes. And then Chris Rojas, he's given me loads of advice that I am so thankful for. But I know because they've worked with me a lot, in preparing for monologues, preparing for self-tapes, auditions and whatnot. And that's something that the Firefly Creative has done as well, because I've worked on 2 projects with them, and so I went through the audition process with them many times. So I think just getting prepared with self-tapes and whatnot, I think that's kind of what's helped me the most. Just because it's like every time you do a self-tape, you get those nerves at first, and then it's like, what am I doing? And you always have that realization. It's like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but you just keep doing it and doing it and doing it, and eventually it clicks.
Yeah, this is actually great. So you're talking about self-tapes right now. So if somebody doesn't know what that means, what's a self-tape?
Yeah, so usually a self-tape, it's when you're auditioning for a project, film. Some plays do it as well. I know this time with COVID and everything, some companies aren't doing auditions in person. So usually a company will set you up with some sides, or they'll request a monologue or some story, poem, whatever they request for an audition, and you pretty much set up a camera and you either read off the sides, the lines that they give you to do, or you read off the monologue, and you can do it as many times as you want. So it's not like an in-person live audition where it's like, oh, if you mess up, like, that's it. Yeah. You can do it until you think, all right, this is it.
Yeah. I'm going to give a huge tip here because I've put out a few casting calls now and I've given lines out. If you show me that you're reading the lines directly when you're recording it, I'm skipping it and I'm not going to watch it. If you can't memorize two to three lines, maybe 4 lines that I sent you, like, you know what I'm saying? So like when I see the people that took the time to do that, instantly my attention's grabbed way more. So if you're trying to get into acting, really just pay attention like that. For me, it's like, this is the first time I get to see how much effort you're willing to put into something. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, you're going to read it off the paper. Like, well, when we show up and you have to then do it and perform it, is that the expectation that I have out of you? So that's always been something that I've noticed on that end. So just kind of a little tip there on this side of things. But speaking of tips, you've kind of gone through the process. We know we talked, you've done some classes and things like that and got to work with some different things. If there was somebody that was trying to get into acting right now, what would you give them for advice? Like, where would you tell them to start? What would you tell them to do?
Yeah. Oh boy. So to start, honestly, just jump into it. You think that you're interested in theater or film, find random casting calls on Facebook. Like, that's what I did. That's what I still do. And then send an email or private message the person who sends out the casting call, whatever they request. And then just say, hey, I'm a new actor. I'm looking to get experience, and just go into it. And then I know this is pretty stereotypical for people to say, but you're always going to get rejection. And, you know, it's like, once you get that yes, don't expect that you won't get that rejection again. Mm-hmm. You know, you can get this huge role, and that's awesome. But then say you audition for another project, don't let that get your expectations up there again.
Yeah. And that happens to even people in Hollywood. I mean, that's what's beautiful and complicated about art, right? I mean, you can be a phenomenal actor or actress, but like, sometimes you're just not that part, no matter how good you are. And people take it personally sometimes. I hate the rejection process. I mean, when I go through and I have to figure out like who I want to cast for what, it's like, because again, it's like when you tell somebody like, hey, it's like not this part, it's like, I just want to like really let them understand, not this part, not that I don't believe in you or your skill set, because there's people that are just, they're very talented. And it's like, oh man, I wish I could use everybody. But you know, you get that vision in your head and you try to stick with it. So when you get a script, what do you do first? Do you read the whole thing in one shot? Do you put music on? Like, what's your process to get into a role? So you finally landed it, you have it, and now what do you do?
Yeah, so I feel like my process is not good. So usually, I know I did this for Illuminate. When I got the script, I went and searched for all the lines that my character had. And I was like, all right, so this scene is me. And then I really just skipped everything else. Which I always like to try to get a feel for the character, get a feel for the lines. And I always like to personify my own character, but kind of create them for myself and see how I relate to them and see what characteristics of mine go into them and what characteristics. And I always, I've noticed that I take characteristics from the characters that I play and then somehow adapt them to myself. But usually I'll read through my character's lines, read through their scenes, and at that point, whether it's one or a few times, then I'm like, okay, this is who they are. I know, like with Illuminate, it was a little bit difficult because Natasha was a very difficult character to play. She very traumatized. She doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know where, you know, she's been stuck in like the human trafficking industry for 4 years, and she doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know herself outside of the industry that she's in. She's never been able to evolve, been able to adapt. So she's very negative in a lot of aspects. And so that was kind of difficult to bring out because I was kind of looking or striving for like a sarcastic aspect, but I was like, no, that's not who she is at all. So it was kind of difficult because I was trying to bring out this character that wasn't there originally. And then eventually at some point I was like, okay, I kind of found my footing here. And it's gotten easier since then with scripts. I know that was probably the hardest one that I've worked with so far.
So you've talked about the Firefly creative, and first-time director Colin Tracy came out and just made a feature film, Illuminate. So go ahead and let's talk a little bit about Illuminate.
Yeah, so Illuminate was their first feature film. I think their first film in general. I know they had done a few audio series beforehand. And he directs the plays over at Evangel, which is Evangel Assembly of God, their church over there. So he's kind of the arts director out there. And Illuminate, I don't want to get this wrong, but I believe when Colin was in college at UMass Amherst, he had originally wrote the script for a play of Illuminate, and then eventually he developed it into a book series. Might be vice versa, but I believe the play came first. And then eventually he made it into a film. And I remember I was probably a junior in high school, and I had seen he had posted a casting for the play. And this was when I had like first freshly gotten my license. And I remember the auditions were out in Springfield, and I was like, I don't want to drive on the highway. I don't want to go out there. So then I never auditioned. But I remember when I first saw the casting call and I was reading through the characters and the synopsis and whatnot. And I remember being like, Natasha sounds awesome. But again, I never auditioned. And then I believe it was when COVID first hit, I saw the same casting for a film version. And I was like, wait, isn't this the play that I wanted to audition for just a few months ago? And I was like, it is. And so I went and auditioned, and I submitted a self-tape. My lovely friend Morgane helped me. She read the opposite lines for me, so that was awesome. She helped me film and whatnot. And then I got a call back, and I was like, no way, this is my first film. I was still in high school at the point because we were just in quarantine and whatnot. But then I got the role of Natasha, which is what I wanted a few months ago, and there we were. We started filming in June. It was the weekend of my 18th birthday, so that was like super memorable. And then we filmed for a few months, probably until August, October or so, sometime around there. But that was a super awesome project. You know, it's about human trafficking. It falls on Paul Cross, who is a family man. However, he is a human trafficker. So it's like not what the rest of the world sees. It never meets the eye. There's always another surface level that you don't know about. And even his wife and his daughter, who in the film, they have no idea until it is revealed. And then there is Blair Mead, who is a human trafficking victim. She is the best friend of my role, Natasha. And she's sort of the light, the more hopeful one of the two of us. Not really towards the end. You know, she kind of takes the darker spin, and my character kind of uplifts a little bit. But Natasha, she is very dark, very, very dark and twisty. She doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know about the world. She doesn't know how to navigate the world. She doesn't know how to navigate herself. But Blair, her best friend, helps her with that. And Natasha, she was trying to get out of the trafficking industry, and Blair was like, no, we'll get caught. Worse things will happen if we try to leave. And I don't want to spoil the ending, but they kind of switch roles. You know, Natasha starts out dark, Blair turns out light, and then it like flip-flops.
When you guys did that, like in the filming days, did it just kind of naturally happen? Like you guys knew that was going to be the flow of the script to begin with, or was it like hard to transition into that, like with your acting opposite?
It was kind of difficult because I think there were a few scenes that I totally misread the interpretation of, and then when we were actually filming the scenes, I was like, oh, this is what actually happens. And I was like, Colin, I didn't know. This is what I thought was happening. And he was like, oh no. And I was like, oh, then I have to switch my entire character choices here. But I knew my character was dark, and that's what I wanted to portray, because that wasn't something that I'm used to. Because I mean, I've always been like a bubbly, naturally like happy-go-lucky person. And so I was like, okay, I want something darker. I want something below the surface that I'm not used to, that'll challenge me, and it did. But working, because Hannah's 8, she played Blair, and I did kind of know that it flip-flopped, but kind of towards the end, there's a scene where there's a altercation between a few characters, and the character Blair, she has a traumatizing moment shortly before this altercation, but then it blows over, and she's finally like, no, I am done with all of this. And she's kind of like, Natasha, you were right. We need to leave. We need to get out of here. And then at that point, I'm like, or Natasha is like, no, you don't need to do this. We can get out of here on her own. Like, you don't need to go to the extreme that she did. That was kind of difficult, because it was like playing Natasha, she was always the negative one, and now it was like, oh, I have to be the consoling, more positive one, even though it's not a positive moment. But
did you have to do this, like change the characters the same day in shooting, or did you have separate days so you could really get into the mindset? Or talk a little bit about how that played into it.
Yeah, so they were a lot of separate days. So luckily I didn't have to have...
How many days did you shoot total for Illuminate?
Gosh, a lot. I think we mainly shot weekends, so Saturdays, Sundays, and we did that from the end of June till August, October or so. Okay. So it was a good few weeks. I mean, I wasn't at all of the shoot days, but... we did shoot for a while, but luckily we did not have to shoot any like happy moment, depressing moments. So it was kind of easier. But I remember it was like my first day. I was super nervous because I had never met any of these. Like I never met Colin or Lorelei or anybody else in person yet. So that was kind of difficult. I was nervous. I remember my friend Chris Crockett Sears, he was actually also there on my first day because he was an extra. And so that was a little bit easier because I was like, oh, I know you. I've known you for a long time. But one of the very first scenes that I had to do, and this is kind of how the film opens at some point. But Natasha, she gets assaulted by one of the traffickers. And that was one of the first scenes that I filmed, and I was like, oh my god,
we gotta start with this, really?
Which it was good and bad in a way, but the character Alexi, who's played by a wonderful man named Caesar, I did not know him at all at that moment. I was like, hi, I'm Marianne, hi, I'm Caesar, okay, now go and film the scene. Which was completely fine. But I remember watching the film and looking back on it from that first weekend, I was like, man, there are a lot of things that I wish I had done differently. And I was like, I wish we could refilm that entire weekend. But yeah.
I do that so much. I look back at projects, and where I get stuck on is it's like, you could edit a project for the rest of your life and never stop. So it's like, I have to just draw a hard line where I'm like, nah, I put enough time into it. It's good enough. Like I have to just move on and do something else. I just had that with Eddie. I went back and forth for a while. Like I could have pushed it further, but I was just like, it's just time to move on. So I think all creative types, I think we do that, right? We're always going to look back and be like, and I think that's it too. Like we're always growing. I mean, even from the test shoot to the day where we worked with you on Roles Required, like your talent has improved like astronomically. And then you got to do the, like, no, it was awesome. So it's like, it's just, so you're just, you improve your skills. We've improved our skills. So I can't wait to see, what we can do together in the future. So we'll start to wind down here, but this is great. So I just have a last few questions I ask my guests here. So give me some of your favorite movies and why.
Oh boy. So I've been on a Little Women kick. Not the new 2019 version. I'm sorry, because I know a lot of people love that version. But the version with Winona Ryder and Christian Bale, 1994, I believe, was the year it was released. That is one of my all-time favorite films. I remember growing up watching that with my grandmother on the VHS tapes, and I remember, I want to say, I think, you know how they unwind after a while, you watch it so many times. I'm pretty sure it got to that point because I watched it so often. It was like every time I went over to my grandmother's house, I was like, can we watch Little Women? Can we watch it? And I was like a young kid, and here I am wanting to watch that film. But it's one of my favorites to this day. Recently, I watched The Cat in the Moon, which was written and directed by Alex Wolff. And because I don't know, you may know like the Naked Brothers band that used to be on Nickelodeon. So I remember watching that and I was like, I love it. It was dark, it was twisty, it was based in New York, which was awesome. And there were a few shots that I was like, I know exactly where that is. So that was a really good film. It was really well done. But I don't know, I feel like I've been watching a lot more of local artist work. I feel like I haven't really been watching a lot of films. But I don't know, I think Little Women's probably one of my top favorite movies at this moment. Oh gosh, what else is there?
That's what happens to me too. I'm like, there's just so many. It's like, well, are we talking horror? Are we talking comedy, action, independent? But like, yeah, there's too many factors, right? Yeah. Fantastic. Marianne, is there anything you'd like to add or say to the people out there from?
Actually, yeah, you know, I remember you asked me earlier, like what I would want to say to new actors and whatnot. And yeah, I remember I touched on the whole thing of getting past the point of rejection, but there's also a difficult point with a support system. You know, not everybody's going to support you in the art industry and in the performance industry. You know, I remember with Illuminate, I had some friends that I was like, hey, I want you to watch this thing that I made that I'm super passionate about, that means a great deal to me. And I had some people be like, we're not watching it. Or be like, stop talking about Illuminate. And I was like, okay, point taken. So it's like not everybody will support you. And it's just, you gotta just stay with yourself and just get through it, because as long as you are passionate, you don't need anybody else. I mean, it's awesome to have a support system, obviously. And I have some awesome people. Like my friend Abby, she said to me when the premiere for Scars was announced, she was like, can I come with you to the premiere? I was like, yes, absolutely. And, you know, my brother and sister-in-law, they're super supportive of me. But, you know, it's just, I think those are the two trickiest parts of being an actor and being in the performance industry: rejection and a support system. Because
it's funny you bring up the support system, actually. Well, so you brought up the Naked Brothers band. So anything 90s Nick, Eric would have been all about. But like Eric brings it up too, even in the art world. Like, I just feel if you tell somebody like, hey, I want to be an actress, what's their first thought? Like, yeah, right. Like, right. It's everybody's first thought. You know, I mean, it's just kind of how society is, because so few people make it, but they don't understand, like, you don't need to be in like the blockbuster Hollywood movie that everybody talked about for the summer to be like a successful actor or actress. There's so much unbelievable independent or lower budget film and cinema out there that you can be a part of. It pays, it's rewarding, it goes to film festivals, it gets seen, and it's something that you can be proud of at the end of the day. And even for what we're doing, like you talked about my gear and stuff, my gear is not the most expensive gear, but I really took the time to learn how to use it, but it's accessible to us now. So we're able to do that. But the support's tough. I just think, again, they don't get it. I mean, if you told somebody you wanted to be an artist, they'd say the same thing. If you told, you know, actress, any creative, a musician, right? What are they going to do? Like, you're not going to do it. And that's what's tough. Society has, they've painted the lines of what we are just supposed to accept is like, well, if you don't meet these standards, you failed. And I think art for me, like, that's what I love about it. Like, there's no failure. Like, everything I've done, even if it's a project I've worked on for a while and I haven't put it out, I learned from it. Even if it's an acting, spot you tried for and you didn't get, you learned from it, right? You went through the auditioning process. You talked to new people you didn't meet before. Like, I'm just sick of like everything. Like, nothing has to be negative, like a failure. Like, let's just grow and learn from stuff, And like, that's how I'm looking at things for now. So I also hear what you're saying, but yeah, if you can't get the support from people, make it yourself. I've talked about that before. Like, my advice is if you want to try to do this, whether you want to be a filmmaker, you want to be an actor, actress, do it. You said the same thing today. Do it. Grab your cell phone, get a few friends. Like, you can be the driving force, and you're not going to have Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4Ks overnight, but it's not about that. It's about learning the process. And I think that's when I've had the most fun, because again, the practice day, I had a blast that day. I learned so much. And it's like, it was kind of serious because you guys had some lines and some things you wanted to accomplish, but you also got to experiment and have fun with it, So I hope to do more of that.
Yeah.
Marianne, it was wonderful having you on. I'm going to have you back on again soon. And thank you for being on the Running Scared podcast.
Thank you for having me. And congratulations on the film festival for Eddie.
Thank you. It's going to be the 25th through 27th, I think. Yeah, I got our premiere day. I think it's the Friday we get premiered. So
Nice. That's awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.